Hello and welcome to Quartic. This is episode 7 in our series, CFA Level I, 10 Topics in 10 Weeks. The topic for this week, topic number 7, is fixed income. Fixed income accounts for 11% of the exam, and although it has the same weighting as equity, it is a more complex and more involved topic, and so you might find yourself spending more time on fixed income than you did on equity. But don't worry, invest the time as it will pay off on the exam day. The first reading is Fixed Income Securities, Defining Elements. Now this is a reading which is very wordy, it contains lots of details, lots of definitions, and so lots for you to memorize. So you should know the basic features of bonds, including the inverse relationship between yields and bond prices. And when you're looking at the reading, ensure you pay attention to the detail when considering variations on coupon structures, principal repayments, and also contingency provisions, including call and put features. Fixed income markets, issuance, trading, and funding is the next reading. Again, a lot to memorize. You need to understand the different types of debt security issuers within the various markets. So here we're talking about governments and corporates mainly. Be able to describe the primary bond markets and the various forms of public offerings, as well as private placements. Pay close attention to the underwriting process and the role that each party plays within that process. Also, know the basic features of secondary bond markets. Understand how banks can create short-term funding and how they use the repo market as well. The next reading is Introduction to Fixed Income Valuation. This is actually a very significant chapter as it represents a large proportion of the fixed income coverage. Now the good news is some of the basics of bond pricing would have already been covered in FRA and in quants. So what you need to do here is spend your time building on that knowledge. So know that calculating a bond's value is based on discounting the bond's future cash flows, but be aware that spot rates, forward rates, or even the current market yield could be used as the discount rate. Now you need to know where each one of these rates comes from and how to apply them when valuing your bond. Other areas to focus on would include calculating full prices, flat prices, and accrued interest. And also pay attention to the use of matrix pricing for pricing infrequently traded bonds. You'll also find a section which looks at calculating yield to maturity, current yield, simple yield, yield to call, and yield to worse. So be aware of all of these, be able to calculate them. Also be able to calculate forward rates from spot rates and vice versa. And finally, be able to distinguish between the different types of spread measures. So your benchmark spread, G spread, I spread, Z spread, and the option adjusted spread. The next reading is Introduction to Asset-Backed Securities. Now this is not the most straightforward chapter, so ensure that you invest an appropriate amount of time here. Understand the process of securitization, so that's where an illiquid asset, such as a mortgage, is turned into a marketable security, such as a bond. And to aid your memory and understanding, just make a list of the various types of asset-backed securities in this reading. Know their issuers as well as the risks involved, so things like prepayment risk. Do the practice questions at the end of the reading to gauge how the content will be tested. Next we have Understanding Fixed Income Risk and Return, another fairly hefty reading. We already know that there's an inverse relationship between interest rate and bond prices. So this reading focuses on measuring the sensitivity of a bond's price to changes in interest rates by calculating duration. Now, as a minimum, know how to calculate and define Macaulay duration and modified duration. Be aware that effective duration is a more appropriate risk measure for bonds with embedded options, and also be able to calculate portfolio duration, money duration, and price value of a basis point. Understand the need for convexity adjustments, and be able to calculate the change in the price of a bond given its convexity and duration. The last reading is Fundamentals of Credit Analysis. This is probably the shortest reading of the 6 in fixed income and is the most straightforward, but still lots to memorize. So if you're short on time, skim through the reading, have a look at the summary at the end of the reading, and do all the end of reading practice questions. So that is it for fixed income, and that's it for this week. Thank you all very much for watching. For free access to Quartic Online, please get in touch using the details on the screen. Also follow us on Twitter @Quartic Training for access to more videos and useful resources.